Senator Parker, thank you for sitting here with us and talking a little bit about the IDC. You've been in the Senate for a while. You've had to deal with these members. What is it like on a day-to-day basis working with members that are supposed to be Democrats caucusing with you, but of course are working with Republicans?
Well, it's frustrating to say the least, right? To have a group of renegade Democrats who are, teaming up with the Trump Republicans, in our own body. And these are folks, frankly, that we work with and we've nurtured, that we've had, good relationships with. Many of them I shared, districts with and in the same county with. So we're dealing with each other even outside of the chamber. And so it's very, very frustrating and at times infuriating, frankly, because of the dishonesty of the position.
You said that you share districts with some of these folks, communities. Mm-hmm. Do you see that your constituents are now waking up to what's happening? That one of their leaders might be, representing a different party than they were elected on?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the community is enraged. I think that they feel betrayed. Mm-hmm. I think that they feel that a lot of it is that politics already has a bad name. And so when you say one thing and do something else, it lacks integrity, and people don't like that. People want to believe that you are the person that you campaign to be. And if you say you're going to be a Democrat, they expect that democratic values follow with that. And specifically in a place like Brooklyn, which is the largest Democratic county literally in the country, right? Largest number of Democrats, largest county. And so, when you're saying that you're going to be with Democrats, and then you come out and you're empowering a group of Republicans who are bringing things to the floor, like anti-sanctuary city bills, like they're empowering them to bring in things that lock up more Black and Latino, young people, and really, continue to perpetuate the prison industrial complex in the state of New York. When you're empowering a group of people who don't really care about social services, don't care about the safety net, when you're empowering the same group of people who are in Washington and trying to take away people's health care, that in Brooklyn alone would affect 450,000 people. We certainly don't believe, well, let me say this. The community certainly doesn't believe that those folks should continue to be in party and be empowered to take away opportunities for themselves.
Why do you think these Democrats decided to make this deal with the IDC? Mm-hmm. Is it uniform reasons, or are they cutting specific deals with each of with the Republicans?
Well, first we have to get to the creation of the IDC, which is that at the end of the day, you wind up with a group of white members who really, frankly, couldn't take Black leadership. Mm-hmm. At the time we had Malcolm Smith, and followed by Senator John Sampson. Mm-hmm. They simply wanted to find leadership that would vote for them as opposed to the leadership that was being picked by the conference. And really, the leaders that were picked by the conference weren't picked, really, frankly, for racial reasons as much as it was policy reasons. Mm-hmm. If you're really going to be aggressive, then you have to put forward progressive, stances. You can't be somebody who has put forward things like, bringing back the death penalty and then call yourself a progressive. You can't put forward things like, property tax caps, which we know don't work, and are regressive forms of taxation, and then call yourself progressive. You really have to really do the hard work of addressing the issues in the community. And that wasn't the case, right? And then now you have a number of people who are kind of jumping on the bandwagon, frankly, because it's been allowed, and they can get, trinkets for themselves, bigger offices, drivers, money, walking around money that they can give to projects. But what you're doing while you're doing that is you're disempowering Black and Latino communities all over the state, particularly in places like Brooklyn. Currently, we have 9. Brooklyn again has the largest delegation of members of the state Senate. Mm-hmm. Right? There's 9 members. Right? Currently, 4 of them are chairs of committees. Right? If the IDC simply made I'm not even saying get rid of the IDC at this point, but if they just gave a coalition with the Democrats, mm-hmm. you would then have 8 chairs of committees. Only one other, who's a Republican, would be out. They would still have their chairs, and they can still keep their trinkets, their offices, their cars, their drivers, mm-hmm. their little walk around money. They still have all of that. But you would also then empower people like, Vernon Montgomery to be the chair of Social Services Committee. You would empower people like Martin DeLon to be the chair of Transportation. You would empower people like Roxanne Prasad to be a chair of a committee, right? And that way, and this is what, again, the voters have voted for, because there are 32 Democrats sitting in the chamber. And so, so what are you looking for other than to empower yourself when you continue along this path?
Why do you think they were able to gain a few members just this last election? I mean, you mentioned that they were primarily a white group, and now they've brought in some people of color from different communities who were able to cut deals. But with the public pressure on them and protests outside their offices and at every public event, and with the potential of having the Democratic majority where they could possibly become a chair of a committee, what's the point? If they could have gotten it with the Democrats, the same stuff with the Democrats, because the Democrats would have been in control.
Right. I agree with you. They should have done it with the Democrats, but again, at the end of the day, are they really progressive? Right? So maybe it's helpful for you to pretend to be progressive and then use the Republicans as a backstop to say, well, we can't get this done because of Republican votes. If you create a Democratic coalition, you're going to get progressive legislation. And you're going to get progressive legislation because then you have a Democratic Senate, a Democratic Assembly, and a Democratic governor, which, in fact, this is what the people of the state of New York have voted for, right? And so, you have to ask them, why they continue to do this. I think most of the members who went for the trinkets recently, two things. One, they're the communities that are neediest, right? And so I think there's a lot of pressure to feel like they needed to bring something home. But it also was it was actually before, things changed in the national government that has added so much pressure and so much attention to partisan politics, which didn't exist before. And so there's a lot more pressure because now people are woke, and so people are paying a lot more attention.
You mentioned that they claim to be progressive. They're constantly coming out with statements about how they support the DREAM Act and different forms of legislation. How is their legislation different than the legislation that would be pushed forward under Democratic leadership?
Well, the question is not what legislation they carry, right? Because I carry more legislation than anybody else in the state legislature, right? But the question is, what do you bring to the floor? And so if they think that they can get the DREAM Act done, then bring the DREAM Act to the floor. Get your Republican partners to, in fact, provide some votes for the DREAM Act and get it done. If you're saying you're there to pass progressive legislation, then where's the progressive legislation? We haven't seen it. Only progressive legislation that's been done is things that, frankly, the governor's been able to do within the context of the budget, right? And so, frankly, even within the context of what the governor hopes to do, a Democratic majority in the New York State Senate, whether that's a coalition majority or not, would certainly, provide more of an environment to pass progressive legislation than what you have now. I mean, I don't know how you expect to pass progressive legislation with a group of people who are against a woman's right to choose, who are against reasonable and sane gun legislation, who are against a social safety net, who are against everybody having access to health care and everybody having access to education. And so, we know that that's who the Republicans are, so why would you create a coalition with them and then expect progressive legislation? Now, when you did it 5 years ago, you didn't have numbers in the chambers. There are now 32 members sitting in the chamber. So why do you not provide it now? And that's the real question. And so, I have called on the IDC to create a Democratic coalition, right? You want to keep your trinkets, all right, then, so be it. But then create a Democratic coalition, and that should be within the line of what you say you want yourself.
So why won't they do that?
You'd have to ask them. I really much honestly believe that they may not be quite as progressive as they claim to be. And for me, the proof is in the pudding. If you claim to be progressives, then create a coalition with other progressives, and let's bring those things to the floor.
How much of that do you think has to do with who's funding them?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, funding, I'm sure, has a lot to do with it. I'm sure that, that they're getting money from, how do you collect $2 million for 8 people in that amount of time if you're not, in fact, cutting deals not to bring things to the floor, right? And it is what it is. And when they say it's not about the money, it's about the money.
Has your conference had any interactions recently that reflect the change of the national, the vibe, as you mentioned, has changed since Trump has been elected? Has it also changed on the floor of the Senate?
Well, yes, it has. I mean, the effect of the national election has certainly changed the mood on the floor. Certainly, I think that the conference of Democrats, the real Democrats in the Senate, are certainly more emboldened in the fact that we're in the right place. But then also, the members of the IDC are more conciliatory because they know that they're getting a lot of pressure in their communities, and so they are anxious not to create a fight on the floor of the state Senate because they don't want that kind of pressure as well. But certainly. The votes that are going to come up around the budget and votes that we're going to take are going to expose them. We took a vote early in the year around public financing of education, in which members walked off the floor. Members of IDC walked off the floor, because they didn't want to be seen as supporting it. There are lots of things that we're going to be doing that I think is going to make them uncomfortable, but more importantly, I want people to look at what's not coming to the floor. Again, if you're saying that you're a progressive, if you're saying that you created this coalition so you can bring progressive legislation and progressive public policy to the state, then where's that progressive legislation? Where are the things that you're actually getting done? Where's your vote on gender? Where's your vote on, the DREAM Act? Where's your vote on raise the age? And some of the other things that need to happen around criminal justice reform. Where are your votes on those things? Where are you able to bring those things to the floor? Because frankly, with 32 Democrats, we should be able to get those things done every single time.
Why doesn't the party just punish them, not give them the line?
This is a question I've asked directly to the governor, who is the head of the party in the state of New York, with all due respect to him. I think that the governor has at least two jobs, right? Chief executive and head of the party. He appoints both the chair of the party and the executive director. And I've suggested to him in person several times that he bring together the leaders of the IDC and our leader, Andrea Stewart-Cousins, and Deputy Michael Gianaris, to in fact negotiate a coalition government of Democrats in the Senate. And I've been told that they'll give it some thought and they'll work on it, but I don't see what there is to think about. I don't see why this is not a no-brainer. You have 32 Democrats, you have the numbers. It's just really a matter of striking a deal, which is literally what everybody else does as well. And so, we've actually called on the governor to do this, and we're hoping that he'll do it sooner than later.
How do you interact with your fellow Democrats that are IDC members on a day-to-day basis? Do you guys get along? Do you talk to each other? Do you go out for drinks?
We do get along. I think we do talk to each other, but I actually have a very close relationship with most of them. And so we do get along, again, especially on the floor. I think we have our differences, and we're open to talk about them. What I'm saying to you, I've said to them, that we should have a Democratic coalition in the New York State Senate. There's no reason not to, and that I'm happy to work with them to in fact help facilitate that conversation. But frankly, the relationship individually is a lot more cordial than it is kind of meta in terms of the meta relationship.
On the local level, you'd think that maybe some of these clubs, the Democratic groups, would be frustrated that their elected official is not voting with the Democrats. Do you see, have any of these clubs or organizations taken back their support from
Absolutely.
These senators?
There's a number of clubs, both Brooklyn and Queens, have taken back their support from IDC members. In fact, we had an IDC member in Queens who recently they're petitioning to throw him out of the party. And so there's a lot of frustration and a lot of anger, frankly, at the IDC over their choice to create a coalition with the Trump Republicans.
Outside of the Senate Dems, the mainline Dems, how are elected officials reacting to the IDC, other Democrats? So if there's a council member in a district, or Mayor de Blasio or Mayor Byron Brown, are they speaking out against the IDC?
Well, it depends on where they are, and a lot of it has to do with proximity, right? If you are a Democrat in the Assembly from the Bronx, you benefit a little bit from having Jeff Klein as one of the leaders of the IDC, and so they're less, frankly, verbose about coming out. There are other members, and like in Brooklyn, who are a lot more vocal about their anger about it, and really they don't understand why it's allowed to go on. And a lot of that, again, frustration points back to the governor, who people feel, as the leader of the party, should be helping facilitate some kind of coalition or some kind of settlement between the IDC and the Democrats.
Why doesn't he? Why hasn't he at this point?
I think that the governor, doesn't feel like he can do it. But I certainly hope that he changes his mind about that and sees that it really helps him, long term. Some people have suggested that the Republicans in the Senate provide both a foil and a backstop for him for things that he may not want to do. Certainly, if there's a progressive Democratic Senate, that then also pushes him to the left, which is maybe a position he's not as comfortable with.
Do you think it's personally comfortable with? I mean, the country is definitely becoming more populist, and even the state is very Democratic. So, if he doesn't want to appear to be more progressive, the numbers would suggest that that's actually a smart thing to do at this point.
Right, I agree with you. I certainly think that the numbers point to the governor to be more popular, certainly to have more of a progressive agenda. I'm not clear that his pollsters and his political advisors are necessarily pointing him in the same direction. And so, again, I continue to push him in that vein. I think that he would do nothing but benefit from having a Democratic Senate. I think that if he made the entire state Democratic, that he certainly would have an easier time passing, important legislation that he wanted to pass, things like raise the age, and things like, rent control and things, for affordable housing that he wants to do could certainly get done much easier and much quicker if he had a progressive Democratic Senate.
Well, Senator, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other final thoughts of?
Nope, I think you covered it.
I appreciate it.
All
yeah.
right, great.
Thanks.